In a world full of comparisons like the sporting world, we love to look for the next player who replicates the conditions of the one who dominates in each era. It serves us well. Ultimately, it allows us to more easily engage in the discussion about who is the best of all. But what would happen if someone came along who was completely different from anything we had ever seen? A player with unique qualities, capable of changing the way we know the game. Someone who, almost without intending to, would mark a before and after in the sport. Well, it has already happened, and that revolution has a name and surname: Stephen Curry. Do you want to know how it all began? Stay tuned to the end and I'll tell you his story. Stephen Wardell Curry was born on March 14, 1988 in Akron, Ohio. Curiously, it was in the same hospital where a certain LeBron James was born 4 years earlier. But that's another story. You probably know better the sporting side of one of his parents, Del, the former professional player who played 16 seasons in the NBA. Of course, the elder Curry was instrumental in his children reaching the best league in the world. But the truth is that his mother was also vital to the development of his competitive personality. Sonia was a great college volleyball player at Virginia Tech, where she met her future husband, and when it came to raising his first son, he took it upon himself to instill in him the value of discipline. Young Steph grew up in an ultra-sporty environment. With Del still in the NBA, his appearances at training sessions were frequent. Shooting hoops in those arenas was a dream, one he vowed to never wake up from. I remember every game I went to, going to the gym to shoot before games, everywhere I went. Oh, you're Stephen Curry, Del Curry's son, right? But skill alone isn't enough. And although he performed very well, everyone focused on his physique. He was not even 1.7 meters tall and was too weak to throw properly. That work became a torture. Steph and Del hardly left that court. Shot after shot, repetition after repetition. There were times when the young man almost threw in the towel. His mechanics improved considerably, but recruiters still ignored him. He received only one offer from the top NCAA universities. It came from Virginia Tech, and the terms were clear. There was no guarantee the kid would make the team. When all seemed lost, a chance presented itself. A small college in North Carolina with a coach in love with his game. People only saw him as a short or medium-sized guard, but I saw him as brilliant. The team was eliminated by Kansas in the next round. The basketball world stopped ignoring him. A couple of days later, the Wildcats had a game. And we had tickets. I told them they would bring stuff to the game. And a security guy called me and said, "Do you need security?" I said, "No, do you need security?" "What do you mean? We come to games all the time." He said, "Okay, so we come to the game." Bob, he's like a rock star. He told me, "We need security here." So that's what I knew. Okay, things have changed. He was the NCAA's leading scorer and was named to the first All-American team. It was time to make his dream come true. And to do so, Curry understood that he had to step up. Surprising news here at the Sports Center. Just moments ago, Stephen Curry announced his decision to forego his senior season and enter the NBA draft. But that change of scenery caused those doubts about his physique to return and stay. He's too small. He's not athletic enough. He can't play defense. He's not strong enough. He's not a real point. He's going to be measured at 1.85 meters, not 1.91 meters as he is on the list, and there's a sense that he's not a big athlete, although he's a great scorer and a great player in terms of getting him the ball and he can find a way to get into the basketball. Look, if he wants to be a pro, he's going to be a first-round pick. But I think right now his name value carries him a little bit more than his actual basketball effectiveness. In those moments, Curry promised himself that he would use those questions as fuel to constantly improve. And knowing that he was following in his father's footsteps, he prepared for one of the biggest nights of his life. With the 7th pick in the 2009 NBA draft, the Golden State Warriors selected Stephen Curry out of Davidson College. At the start of his first NBA season, Stephen Curry was not at the level to be among the top candidates for Rookie of the Year. But in the second half, his performance was superlative. He finished the campaign with averages of 17.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 6 assists, and almost 2 steals per game. However, although he was named Eastern Conference Rookie of the Month in January, March, and April, it was not enough to surpass Tyreke Evans, who ultimately won the award. The following season, Curry began to show that he would be one of the most efficient stars in the league. He led the NBA in free throw percentage, with a spectacular 93%. He also started 74 games and scored 20 or more points in 35 of them, reaching a final average of 18.6 points per game. Endorsed by his ball handling skills, Steph was invited to the skills challenge at the All-Star Weekend. At that event, the young Warriors point guard displayed all his magic, while Golden State saw in Curry a future star, choosing in the 2011 draft the complement to that unique perimeter player. No one knew it, but at that moment one of the greatest duos in recent NBA history was about to take shape. The Splash Brothers were born. At the end of his sophomore season, Curry underwent surgery to repair his right ankle, an area in which he would suffer several injuries throughout his career. In a season that was shortened to 66 games by the 2011 lockout, Steph only played 26. That physical problem would trigger the controversy over his next contract. And despite the fact that the figure was lowered, both parties agreed to sign for 4 years and $44 million. That confidence made his game explode, and in the 2012 to 2013 season, Curry averaged almost 23 points and 7 assists per game, being the main figure of a Warriors team that already had the player who would best understand him on the court, Draymond Green. The point guard closed the season with a total of 272 three-pointers, taking the record from none other than Ray Allen. And as if that were not enough, he established the highest score of his career at Madison Square Garden, when he scored 54 points against the New York Knicks and let the NBA world know that he had arrived. That year he made his playoff debut. Golden State advanced to the first round, but fell in the conference semifinals to the San Antonio Spurs. By the following season, Curry was already a star. He again led the NBA in three-pointers, started the All-Star game for the first time in his career, and was named to the league's second-best team. Games of 40 or more points and long shots became the norm. Fans began to feel that they had found their true role model, but just when everyone thought the team was ready to make the leap, the Los Angeles Clippers eliminated them in the first round of the postseason. Mark Jackson was removed from his position as coach, and in his place came Steve Kerr, the man who would mark a turning point in Curry's career. Backed by a faster and more offensive style of play in which he was the linchpin, the point guard was completely freed and showed his true potential. During that season, 2014 to 2015, he averaged almost 24 points, 7.7 assists, 4 rebounds, and 2 steals per game. Although Curry shot more, his shooting percentages increased. He made 286 three-pointers and broke his own record, something that would become a tradition of sorts. The Warriors swept the board throughout the year, achieved 67 victories, and their best player wrote his name in the golden pages of the NBA. In the playoffs, Curry was vital to Golden State's success and continued to rack up records. He became the player with the most three-pointers made in a single postseason, and his team eliminated New Orleans, Memphis, and Houston to reach the NBA Finals for the first time in 40 years. On the other side, LeBron James's Cleveland Cavaliers. The series didn't start off in the best way for Curry, who suffered a drop in his percentages and couldn't show his best performance. But in the fifth game, he broke out with 37 points and tipped the balance for the Warriors to close out the series in the sixth game. Andre Iguodala was the MVP of the finals. But for Steph, the most important award was having shown that, despite the prejudices and doubts, he belonged to the elite of the best league in the world. Yes, Golden State was a machine, but absolutely no one imagined that that team was capable of achieving what it finally achieved in the year after winning the title, breaking the historic record of regular season victories held by Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls. With the best version of Curry pulling the strings, the Warriors destroyed most of their rivals and finished the season with 73 wins and only 9 losses, 30 points, almost 7 assists, and 2 steals per game. Inclusion in the prestigious 50-40-90 club. 402 three-pointers in the season. The point guard of the moment would be re-elected as the MVP, but with a unique distinction in the history of the league. Curry had a rather eventful postseason, in which, due to an injury to his right knee, he missed several games in the first series. Golden State managed to eliminate Houston and Portland and eventually reached the conference finals against Oklahoma City. The team that had Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant as exclusive OKAC figures put them in check and was one victory away from advancing to the finals. But Steph and company recovered and turned the tie around to return to the ultimate event. The team did not stop breaking records and making history. Beating Cleveland again seemed like one more step. And so the first 4 games indicated, tipping the series in the Warriors' favor with a 3-1 record. All that was missing was one win to seal a magical year. But LeBron James had something else in mind. Led by the King, the Cavaliers rallied from behind and after a historic 7th game, claimed their first championship. Criticism fell on Curry and his intermittent performance during the decisive moments in what was the first comeback from a 3-1 deficit in the finals. Even though he seemed to have erased them with his achievements, Those doubts that arose at the beginning of his career were still there, stalking him in dark times. But nothing was to come like what was to come after the world learned of the next chapter in the life of the Golden State Warriors. Kevin Durant had just announced that he was leaving Oklahoma City for the Storm. What stunned the National Basketball Association world was his signing with the Golden State Warriors. Durant saw this as the best opportunity to win a championship. Kevin Durant, one of the best players in the NBA, was landing in the Bay to become the new star of Golden State. Many took this news as a sign of weakness on the part of the player and the franchise, although most of the criticism fell on Durant. Curry was labeled a false leader, one who didn't respect his franchise status and would cede that role to someone else in order to win. He was labeled a pushover, and a large portion of the public held him responsible for ruining the competition. But for Steph, none of that was true. Set up for a championship, those Warriors looked to the regular season as a way to hone their game. Meanwhile, Curry continued to set records. He went 157 games making at least one three-pointer until going 0 for 10 in a loss to the Los Angeles Lakers. The following game he broke the record for most three-pointers made in a game, when he made 13 against the New Orleans Pelicans. His projection was meteoric. That campaign made him the first player in history with 200 or more three-pointers in 5 consecutive seasons. As expected, Golden State had the best record of the year and entered the playoffs as a top contender for the title. However, an injury prevented Durant from playing in several games in the first round against Portland. So Steph had to bring out his full arsenal. If the Warriors had been a machine all season, they were now practically unstoppable. 4-0 against the Blazers and 4-0 against the Utah Jazz in the semifinals. In between, a free dance class for Rudy Gobert, one of the best defenders of the year. For the third consecutive season, Curry's team found itself in the conference finals, this time against Kawhi Leonard's San Antonio Spurs. Things didn't start off in the best way. Leonard took control of the game and put his team up 25 points, but a fateful injury completely changed the playoffs. From there, Golden State swept the series and qualified for the NBA Finals again. The opponent would be the same as in the last 2 editions, but this time the Western Conference champions were thirsty for revenge. I don't want to feel what I felt last year, and I'm going to do everything in my power to put ourselves in the best position to win this year. Every minute of work up and down, I'm a champion twice over. We go back, baby. We go back. We go back, baby. Let's talk about an unfortunate situation. Houston Rockets threatened to knock off the champion and came very close to doing so. But great performances by the Warriors' Big Four made them win the series after a 7th game, in which Curry was 1 rebound away from scoring a triple-double. On the horizon, a new NBA Finals against the longtime rival. In Game 2 against Cleveland, Curry set a new record for three-pointers in a finals game with 9. Golden State swept the series, and in the final game, the point guard scored 37 points. Many thought the MVP would go to him, but for the second year in a row, Kevin Durant took home the award. However, no amount of debate could change his priorities. Things would be very different over the next few seasons, but we'll have time to talk about that later. The next season was very different from the previous 2. Free agency was a risk to keeping the team together, and internal bickering and media hype kept Golden State's performances intermittent. Although Curry missed 11 games due to injury, he was able to climb to 3rd place on the all-time list of three-pointers. Ultimately, the Warriors took 1st place in the Western Conference and entered the playoffs eager to achieve the three-peat. In the first round, they beat the Clippers and Curry became the player with the most three-pointers in postseason history. But it was in the conference semifinals when he really stood up for the team. A torn muscle forced Durant off the court during Game 5, and with Golden State depleted, Houston had a great chance to get revenge for the years before. However, both Steph and Klay Thompson bounced back in that game, and it was Curry himself who had one of his typical scoring spurts in Game 6. After going into the break without a single basket, he scored 33 points in the second half, and thus gave his team the qualification. Without Durant, Curry would return to his MVP version. Portland was no match for those Warriors, and in the conference finals, Sweep the point guard averaged 36.5 points per game, the highest of his career for a playoff series. 5th consecutive NBA Finals, but this time a new opponent. Even though Golden State managed to win the second game in Toronto, the Raptors were too much of a team for that squad, hard hit by injuries to Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson. Curry had the chance to take the series to a 7th game, but he missed a three-pointer and the Canadian franchise won its first championship in history. Durant decided to leave, and for different reasons, many other key pieces for the dynasty's success also left. Steph had to face a new season without his duo and with the presence of new teammates on the team. The preseason game suggested we would see the wildest version of their game again, but in the 4th game of the campaign, the following happened. If everyone had grown accustomed to seeing the Warriors at the top of the basketball world, The 2019 to 2020 season reminded them how changeable the sport can be. Curry did not return to the court, and without the Splash Brothers, the franchise went through the fourth worst season in its entire history in terms of winning percentage. It was just 15 wins in 82 games for a team that had not dropped below 57 since 2014. The narrative turned to the idea that the dynasty that had dominated the competition for 5 years was finally over. That it was not performance or poor management, but rather injuries that held back Golden State's historic run. But at this point in the video, we all know what Steph is like. Any question or doubt has served as fuel to continue his path to sporting immortality, and that was exactly what he was going to do. Although it would not be a journey without obstacles. After a terrible campaign, the Bay Area team got the second pick in the draft, one that they used to select James Wiseman, a young center with a lot of potential but no experience. With him, Draymond Green, the arrival of Andrew Wiggins in a criticized trade that sent D'Angelo Russell to Minnesota, and Klay Thompson. Curry could compete again if he recovered his MVP version. But fate would have it that the number 11 suffered another serious injury. During the preseason, he tore his Achilles tendon, and that made him out for the entire campaign. A hard blow that forced the number 30 to dust off his wildest side. After 3 seasons with Durant and another injured, the point guard reconnected with the beast that had taken the NBA by storm in 2016 and brought out a brutal performance. He averaged a career-high 32 points, 5.5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal, 48% field goal shooting, 42.4% three-point shooting, 12.7% free throw shooting, and 91.6% free throw shooting. Steph was the scoring champion for the second time, thanks to memorable performances like his personal best of 62 points against the Blazers. The night he surpassed his idol Reggie Miller, becoming the second highest three-point shooter in history, or when he took Will Chamberlain's place as Golden State's leading scorer, he forced his way into the MVP race. But in a very strange season shortened by the presence of the coronavirus, the Warriors did not back up their figure with the necessary collective performance. In fact, they finished 8th and had to fight for a playoff spot in a new format established by the NBA, the play-in. Those days were fateful for Golden State, who lost at the end to the Lakers with a sensational triple by LeBron James, and then did not know how to react against the Grizzlies of Ja Morant, a new villain on their horizon. For the first time since 2012, Curry missed a postseason in an edition in which he was healthy. And yes, the ghosts of the past appeared again, this time in the form of doubts about his ability to lead. Is he really a player who can lead a team to a championship? Or is he only capable of winning with a super team? Was this his franchise or Durant's? Between LeBron and impotence, the perimeter promised itself to get up quickly and come back to silence its detractors. And the conference after that loss reflected it better than anything else. With the promise of an eventual return of Klay, the return of Iguodala and the consolidation of new figures such as the aforementioned Wiggins and Jordan Poole, Curry faced the 2022 to 2023 campaign with a single objective in mind: to take the Warriors to the NBA Finals again. His averages were not extraordinary. In fact, it was the lowest points per game mark since 2017, and the first time in his career that he shot below 40% on three-pointers. But 2022 was one of the best years of his sporting life. He made the All-Star game, was named MVP of that game with an incredible performance of 50 points and 16 three-pointers. He was included in the list of the 75 best players in history that the league compiled for its 75th anniversary. He received another All-NBA nomination and enjoyed the return of his friend after 941 days of absence on a truly emotional night. Oh, and he finally managed to achieve something he had long deserved, surpassing Ray Allen to officially become the player with the most three-pointers in the history of the regular season. He did it, of course, in one of the most iconic stadiums in the world, the one where 9 years earlier he had let the NBA know that he was ready to be a star. Madison Square Garden. However, an injury forced him to stay away from the courts in the final stretch of the regular season. That was a total of 12 consecutive games. That caused Golden State to fall in the standings to third place and have a more difficult path in the playoffs, but it was not going to matter much. The context made number 30 start the postseason as a substitute in the role of sixth man. He played his first 4 games in that manner, and in the 5th to close the first round against MVP Nikola Jokic's Denver Nuggets, he returned to the starting lineup. In the conference semifinals, they faced the villain that had appeared in their path last year, Morant and his Grizzlies, a young team that fought back, but that between the injury of its star and inexperience could not sustain itself. Result of 4-2, vendetta and the Western Conference Finals on the horizon, the rival Dallas Mavericks, the franchise of the amazing Luka Doncic. With a very high collective performance, Kerr's men dispatched their opponent in 5 rounds and thus were crowned champions of the West once again. In this case, with the added bonus that Curry became the first MVP of the finals of that conference. An award named in honor of Magic Johnson, who was born in those playoffs, but the reality was unavoidable. None of that would be remembered if he was not able to lead his team to victory in the next stage. In such a demanding context, the point guard was faced with the biggest challenge of his career. One that could make the difference between consolidating his place in the list of the 10 best of all time or moving away from that group. The most important finals of his life, and against a historic opponent like Boston Celtics, who had returned to the ultimate event after 12 years of absence, things were not going to start in the best way. Despite his 34 points, the Warriors lost at home in Game 1 of the series, and things got tough. Steph added another 29 points to help them come back in Game 2, but now they had to travel to TD Garden, and even his 31 points weren't enough to avoid defeat. 1-2, and with another road game in a matter of hours. If they lose, Golden State would be locked into an almost insurmountable situation. And while he had already reached a point where his career was unquestionable, and there were no reasonable arguments to diminish his legacy, it was time to face a moment that every NBA legend has had to go through. His decisive night, the one that will be talked about forever, and that at some point can define how you will be remembered. He was about to live it. Game 4 of the 2022 Finals, Series 1-2 against TD Garden, in front of one of the most hostile crowds in the competition, and against the best defense in the tournament. Against all odds, Curry did what the best do. He rose to the occasion in adverse situations, and he played the game of his life. 43 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 7 three-pointers, high effectiveness, clutch dominance, and most importantly, the win for his franchise. That one that tied the series at 2. Driven by that performance, the Warriors took control of the situation and won another 2 consecutive games to once again touch the sky with their hands. Absolute glory for a team that became only the second team in history to win the title as a visitor at the Celtics Stadium. The total consecration of its leader, the one who carried the most pressure and who knew how to respond when they needed him the most. Steph averaged 31 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and despite shooting 0 for 9 on 3-pointers in Game 5, he recorded 48% field goal shooting and 43.7% long-range shooting, plus 85.7% free throw shooting. There would be no surprises this time. The Finals MVP, the only trophy missing from the trophy cabinet, would have his name on it. But more than winning the award, that victory boosted his value by shattering the narrative that he could not lead a team to a title alone. 4th ring in 8 seasons, and a sepulchral silence from detractors. Stephen Curry continued to shine in the 2024 season with impressive statistics, averaging 28.6 points, 6.2 assists, and 5.1 rebounds per game. His three-point shooting at 43.1% remains a threat to any team. In key games, such as against the Lakers, he scored 45 points and 9 three-pointers, and against the Suns, his game-winning basket secured the playoffs. In the playoffs, Curry was crucial in the first round against the Mavericks, averaging 32 points per game and an outstanding 50-point performance in Game 3. Although the Warriors fell in the conference finals against the Clippers in 7 games, Curry averaged 31 points and 8 assists, demonstrating his leadership and ability in critical moments. Stephen Curry has not only maintained his excellence on the court, but he has continued to inspire new generations with his unique style of play and unmatched work ethic. What's next for this legendary player? Only time will tell, but his legacy in 2024 is already secured. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content. Thank you for your support.